This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/get started. That's GREENLIGHT.com/get started.
Well, I think it's tokenizing. Hey, we don't need a She-Hulk. If you're going to make a Lady Hulk, fine, but don't call her She-Hulk.
But that cast, though, man.
Oh, yeah, no, the cast looks awesome.
Hey, Cecil.
Oh, hey, Eli.
You, forgot our lunch plans again.
Eli, for the last time, you texting me, it's burrito o'clock, is not lunch plans. I told you I was eating with my wife anyway.
Well, if I can't have you, nobody can.
Ow, dude, fuck.
Hey, what's up? I heard a gunshot. Yeah, hey, did one of us die again? Happens a lot.
Little help.
Oh, I get it.
That's smart.
You get what?
This week's episode, it's about the murder of John Lennon, so Eli shot Cecil as pre-show shenanigans.
Okay, got it. That is nice. That's thematic. It's
Call an
nice.
ambulance. Somebody call an ambulance.
You know, Eli, I got to admit, when you first proposed the idea of starting the show with thematic shenanigans, I thought, it's going to get tired eventually.
Maybe, give me your phone. 911.
But honestly, it stayed fresh, and it adds a little zing to every show.
Well, you know what? Thank you, Noah. That means a lot.
Oh, it's fine. I got it. I'll just Uber, I think.
All right, you guys ready to record?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh,
yeah.
totally, yeah.
I'm on.
So much blood.
Hello and welcome to Citation Needed, the podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts, because this is the internet, and that's how it works now. It was so much funnier before Trump was elected. Now it's not funny anymore. I'm your host, No Illusions. But to get by, I'm going to need a little help from my friends. First up, two men who can't twist without shouting, Tom and Heat.
Okay, actually, I cannot twist at all. My body moves just slightly more than a He-Man toy dipped in super glue. Just a
I
little
twist
more.
on the inside. I have a rubber
Okay.
sole.
Nice.
Oh.
Well done.
Beatles.
Well done. And also joining us tonight, a guy whose very existence screams "Love Me Do," and a guy wishing he would let it be, Eli and Cecil.
Nice.
I want to hold your hand. Sorry, Noah, you were doing something?
Frequently, I'm saying, help. There you go. Yeah.
Come together,
Now-
all of us.
We did.
Right now?
We did. Yeah. All right. So before we get started, I wanted to take a second to thank our patrons, but unfortunately, it's going to take 8 seconds, so I'll take 8 seconds instead. If you'd like to learn how to join their ranks, be sure to stick around to the end of the show. And with that out of the way, tell us, Tom, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event will we be talking about today?
I think we're going to kick off the Christmas season with the story of the murder of John Lennon.
All right. So, Cecil, you chose the topic, which means it's probably not going to be the story of how Hillary Clinton shot him from the grassy knoll. Are you ready to tell us how far apart happiness and a warm gun can really be?
Can we just take a minute and appreciate your very clever wordplay in the beginning here? Maybe Eli
thank
could take some notes. I don't know. Just all right.
No.
All right. So, who, what, when, where, why, and how was the murder of John Lennon?
All right. In order to tell this story, we have to first do a little backstory so we understand the players. Mark David Chapman, the Beatles, John Lennon, and Catcher in the Rye. Now, let's start with the victim, John Lennon.
People who've read Catcher in the Rye.
John Lennon, he probably doesn't need much of an introduction. He was a famous musician, one of the founding members of the Beatles, and probably one of the best-known rock bands in modern history. I'm sure John Lennon would make an amazingly weird episode of Citation Needed, so I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on his history, but John butting heads with religion in his role as one of the lead vocalists for the Beatles is an important note.
Hey, based on this show's record, the fact that you didn't give us a history of bullets is a win. So you nailed it.
Okay, Eli, fun fact. The first bullet was actually hand-carved by an Etruscan in a process that still cannot be replicated to this day.
Not what I said.
The Beatles in 1966 were such a popular band, it's hard to find a modern analog. I could go back to like maybe 1980s Michael Jackson, but I'm hard pressed to tell you anyone after that. The Beatles would be mobbed everywhere they went. Their live appearances would be drowned out by the shrieks of their audiences. They packed every house, sold millions and millions of albums, toured the world, and became very wealthy. John's net worth was about $3.31 million at the time, and that's $25 million in today's money. He was 26.
That's 197 in today's years.
And with all that wealth and fame, of course, came newspaper and magazine interviews. And one of these was something of a turning point for the Beatles and their popularity.
Okay, just a little context. Joe Rogan has 11 million listeners a week and is worth $100 million.
God, that much?
Just in case you were wondering if there was anything still redeemable about modern pop culture. I just wanted to crush the spirit.
Thank you.
I got you, buddy.
Boo.
In March of that year, Maureen Cleave interviewed John for the London Evening Standard. John at the time was leafing through a lot of religion and philosophy books, pretending that he read them. And he had some dope interior design choices, such as, quote, a full-size crucifix, a gorilla costume, and a medieval suit of armor, end quote. While
I don't know
waxing...
which one doesn't belong. I think they all
They could all be in the same space, actually. Like you could
Right? Yeah.
Right.
do all that at
They're
once.
all appropriately random.
What have they done to you, Mongo?
To see now that's sophisticated. I like that.
But while waxing philosophical about how great he was, he uttered this line, which didn't register too much with British audiences. Quote, Christianity will go. It will vanish and shrink. I needn't argue about that. I'm right, and I'll be proved right. What's more, we're more popular than Jesus now. I don't know which will go first, rock and roll or Christianity. Jesus was all right, but his disciples were thick and ordinary. It's them twisting it that ruins it for me, end quote.
And American Christianity was like, too real. We are thick and ordinary. Probably going to murder you. British Christianity was cool. We were not.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Oh, guys, we'd have gotten so killed in the 60s.
Yeah.
Like, I'd probably get the most killed,
Probably.
but we'd all get killed. Well, Eli would probably get the most killed.
I think I would get the funniest killed if it helps.
Like I said,
Sure.
the Brits didn't make much of the line. At first, in the States, it didn't elicit much of a reaction either, even when the whole interview was published in Newsweek. But later, someone decided to headline part of that line and put it on the front cover of a magazine, and America lost its shit. Tons of radio stations stopped playing the Beatles songs. Most of these were in the South, but a few in New York and Boston also joined in. They also destroyed Beatles records on the radio, which I mean could have been any record, but okay, sure.
Right.
And we never heard from the Beatles again.
Right. Yeah. That was so effective.
The American tour was also protested by groups like the Ku Klux Klan and other religious organizations. John did apologize in a press conference, but the American right saw its chance to keep the heat on the band and loop in other characteristics they didn't care for, like the band's long hair and how they promoted black artists. It actually is probably a lot of the latter. In any case, this shitstorm was all over the news and hounded the band for years. It really didn't dull their popularity too much, but it would play a role later on in the story.
Yeah, it's important to remember that whatever religion doesn't ruin isn't for a lack of trying.
John would go on to create several more records with the band, and then he'd start his own solo career.
Which, for the record, was a good reason to shoot him. Not why he did it.
Jesus
It was a
Christ.
good.
He would not stop pissing off the religious fundamentalists. In a song from his solo days called God, Lennon listed all the things he did not believe in. Here is that list in order. Quote,
Leo, Pisces, Cancer cures, detox, reflex. No.
What?
here's the list in order. Magic, I Ching, the Bible, Tarot, Hitler, Jesus, Kennedy, Buddha, Mantra, Gita,
Okay.
Yoga, Kings,
Hey,
Elvis, Zimmerman, and the Beatles.
John, real quick, I get what you're going for there, but maybe skip the Holocaust denial on the list.
Yeah.
Be great.
John would also record the song Imagine, which in the lyrics muses about a world without religion. All three of these slights against God and religion would come up later as the reason for his murder.
Yeah, maybe if we'd been more respectful of the I Ching, a crazy person wouldn't have read instructions to murder him in everyone's least favorite book from high school. That's all I'm saying here. That's Cecil's official position. Go on, Cecil.
Let's take a minute to chat about the murderer, Mark David Chapman. Mark came from an abusive home in Texas where, according to him, his father, a former staff sergeant in the Air Force, would abuse his mother. At a young age, Chapman recalls dreaming up a society of little people that lived in his walls, and he would fantasize about having godlike power over them.
Okay.
In school, Mark claims he was bullied by the other children because he was unathletic. He ran away, maybe he walked quickly away from home if he was unathletic. But anyway, he ran away from home when he was 14, but he returned after 2 weeks in Atlanta.
Kid, I love that after 2 weeks in Atlanta, he was like, that abusive home doesn't sound so bad. I'm going back.
He was also using a lot of drugs at this point in his life, too. That was
At
also
a point where he
mentioned.
was dreaming up a society of little people living in this no shit.
Yeah, tiny
I mean,
society.
look, I don't want to be on the side of the bullies here, but that is exactly the sentence I'm about to say. Chapman would go on to murder one of the greatest living musicians, which is, I think we can all agree, one of the top 10 asshole moves in history. So have we considered maybe his classmates were just ahead of their time?
So there's something I want to take issue with there. Greatest living music. That's
Thank
only
you.
true in the sense that all musicians are on that list somewhere, right? Like every musician is somewhere on the list of greatest living musicians.
Mark eventually found religion at 16 and became a born-again Presbyterian.
My case goes stronger.
That's true.
Spent much of his time associating with the church, and he met his first girlfriend. I guess they went out handing out religious tracts to people as a date. Anyway, he became a camp counselor for the Bible summer camp sponsored by the YMCA and was wildly popular with the kids. Everyone that worked with him thought he did an amazing job working with children. Hidden that for later when we talk about Catcher in the Rye.
Okay. There's a bunch of people in Texas bragging about this right now. They're like, yeah, I found God as a kid. Thanks to Mark David Chapman. That's right. That's how I found God.
Mark graduated high school and then started working with Vietnamese refugees in Arkansas. And he would go to Lebanon as an aid worker. The wiki points out that at a government meeting as an aid worker, Chapman shook hands with Gerald Ford, prompting a small group of gullible people to say, interesting. He went on to college, but had an affair, got depressed, and dropped out.
The woman he had an affair with? Geraldine Ford. Interesting.
Chapman was also obsessed with the novel The Catcher in a Rye, after a friend recommended to him right after high school. I don't want to get too off the path here because I don't want to steal a book I never read but really hate from Keith, but this book was very instrumental in Chapman's life and in Lennon's death.
Okay, Catcher in the Rye is one of those asshole litmus test books, right? If someone tells you Catcher in the Rye is their favorite book, just get the check and block them from your social media. It's the safest thing you can do.
All right, so I just want to point out that when Heath writes a fucking blog about how J.D. Salinger killed John Lennon, it's going to be fucking Cecil's fault.
I actually liked that book in high school. I failed Tom's test.
I
so
liked it in
bad.
high school too, but I haven't read it since high school, so I don't know if that's a problem.
I taught
But
that book in high school. Like
You need to read Catcher in the Rye 3 times in your life. When you're a teenager, so you can be on Holden's side. When you're a 20-something, so you can fucking hate Holden. And then again as a grown-up, so that you can realize that Holden is a child and all the stuff you hated him for in your 20s is way more reflective of the adults around him than it is the child who you hated.
Yeah, or you could read Catcher in the Rye once, like most people, dismiss it as another bland, masturbatory, white, male-centered coming-of-age story of a disaffected, privileged asshole, and then reread something that treats your time as valuable, like the back of a fucking cereal box.
Oh, shit. Jesus Christ.
Either choice.
I mean, you've
we're
got
doing
options. I'm
vulgarity
just
for
saying you've
charity
got
on this
options.
one too.
Audience, if you're unfamiliar, the broad strokes of Catcher in a Rye are a young runaway's first-person perspective of realizing that he's not a child anymore. There's several themes in the book, but the most important is the concept of phonies. The protagonist, Holden Caulfield, is obsessed with pointing out hypocrisy and calling everyone a phony. He's also constantly getting the shit kicked out of him for like the entire book.
Does
But,
constantly get
but-
shit kicked out of
but
him. That's
basically, a depressed kid going through some weird existential shit and taking it out on pretty much anyone that cares for him. He's also obsessed with running away from the world, but is powerless to do so. He's all talk and will basically comply after 15 minutes of complaining. The book itself is also on the banned book list because it uses PG-13 language and sexual themes.
The story of an overprivileged homophobic incel and how society is wrong. It's not him, it's society. That's what the book is about. Somehow Ben Shapiro was a book in 1951.
Chapman identified really strongly with the protagonist of this book. His life up to this point follows the script pretty well. Holden loves kids and is childlike himself. So is Chapman. Holden basically fucks up a lot of his relationship and runs away depressed. There's a chicken and egg thing going on here. I'm not sure if Chapman modeled his life after the book or if he just read the book and saw the similarities, but the dude is obsessed with the novel to a pretty unhealthy level.
Well, yeah, you know who else likes kids? Santa. Notice how the guy didn't start dressing in a red suit and riding around in a fucking sleigh, though.
Chapman's life after college is a series of career jumps and subsequent failures. He tries to go back to doing aid work and has an argument. He took a short course to become a security guard and then went to Hawaii to get a job in that field, and then he quit again. While there, he drove to a secluded area, put a hose in his tailpipe, ran it into the window of his car, and tried to kill himself with the exhaust. The attempt was interrupted by a fisherman that saved his life. He was admitted to the hospital with depression after the attempt on his own life, eventually released and became a security guard for that same hospital.
So I guess what we're saying is be careful who you save, people. You might cost the world another White Album. Okay?
Great. So when Eli writes a blog about how that fisherman did it, it's going to be your fault, Susan.
Okay, no need to worry. Eli's actually just going to write a post about how he's going to write a blog about it. He'll never actually write the blog.
Oh,
Hurtful. Too far. Too far.
I love you, buddy.
Silent treatment for the rest of the podcast.
Too real.
Chapman eventually got married, had job troubles as well as substance abuse problems. He eventually would confide in one of his friends in a letter, quote, "I'm going nuts," end quote. He signed this letter, The Catcher in the Rye.
All right. Well, people who've read the book probably need a minute to process the irony of the book Catcher in the Rye pushing some kid over the edge. So we're going to pause for a quick break for a little apropos of nothing.
All right, gentlemen, welcome to the PR bureau that must exist somewhere every time a white guy kills people. What do we got?
All right. First up, we got a mass shooter who screamed, "I'm a white supremacist and I'm killing people because of that." He said that while he was shooting everybody.
Lone Wolf. See if you played any video games, then get back to me.
We have a bomber in Oklahoma who is literally a member of the KKK.
Yeah, yet another lone wolf. Do we know anybody who can say he was crazy? I mean, anybody at all that'll say it.
Well, I mean, killing people is pretty crazy, but it's obvious that the
Crazy.
reason...
Lone wolf is alone. Wolf is alone. He's a lone wolf. Who is crazy? Wolf alone. Leave it. What's next?
A white angry loser shot John Lennon.
Was he alone?
No, married actually. A job, just a shitty Christian guy who wanted to shoot someone famous. Pretty much anyone.
Did he like any books?
I'm probably everybody likes a book.
Book makes guys shoot someone. Put it in the presses.
Sir,
Yes, Johnson.
do you ever worry that by supporting the narrative that makes these people into like famous, weird, crazy monsters, we're just kind of making the problem worse?
Worse, yeah.
How so?
Well, it's just that white entitlement has reached such a psychotic peak unrelated to reality that it strikes me that a lot of young men at the slightest sign of their own normality will harm other people just to have any kind of importance. And and that this tendency could be magnified to a truly horrifying extent by the invention of like a social internet and the isolation that came with it.
Or is it video games?
Yeah, probably video games.
Those are super violent.
It's definitely that.
Okay.
And we're back. When we last left off, John Lennon was alive and Jesus was sad. So, Cecil, how are those problems rectified?
Oh, no.
Two birds, one stone.
In December of 1980, Chapman went to New York with the intention of killing someone famous. Apparently, Chapman chose John Lennon to kill because he was easy. He reportedly had a whole slew of famous people he was willing to kill. They just needed to be famous. He was prepared to kill any of these people. This is from the Wiki article. Quote, Paul McCartney, talk show host Johnny Carson, actress Elizabeth Taylor, actor George C. Scott, former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, just elected U.S. President Ronald Reagan, and Hawaii Governor George Ariyoshi,
Well, so
end quote.
Hit list wasn't all bad, right?
No, it wasn't. It really wasn't. No. David Bowie said that he was also on the list. Bowie was in a Broadway play at the time, The Elephant Man, and Lennon and his wife Yoko Ono had front row tickets the day of Lennon's death. Chapman also had front row tickets to the same show.
He just leans down, sees the three of them. I forgot my gun at home. I'm so sorry. Do you mind waiting here while I run back? This is such a great threefer for me. I'm
Chapman bummed around New York for a couple days, spending his last free weekend kind of cosplaying Catcher in the Rye. He went to Central Park to ask the taxi driver where the ducks went in winter, just like Holden did in the book. In Catcher in the Rye, Holden rents a tiny, cheap hotel room, and Chapman did the same thing at the YMCA. And in the book, the protagonist pays a prostitute and then decides just to talk. Chapman did the same thing. He brought a prostitute to the room and paid her twice what she asked and then just talked to her.
Okay, I feel like sex workers were getting this all the fucking time at this moment. Like, oh, you're doing the fucking Catcher in the Rye thing. Gross. This is the word. This happens all the time. I'll fuck you for the normal price, but I'm not touching your personality unless you pay double. Absolutely not. Fucking worst.
It's also important to note, Chapman is not a lonely
Right.
child. Okay? If I hide in a museum like the Boxcar Children, it's not a whimsical adventure. It's a horror movie.
Also worth noting, after that encounter, Holden Caulfield gets punched in the dick by her pimp. Either commit to the fucking bit or go home, Mark.
The day before Chapman killed Lennon, he ran into James Taylor on the subway in New York. James Taylor is the I've seen fire, I've seen rain guy.
Okay, James Taylor did not break open the doors to our hearts to be the I've seen fire, I've seen rain guy, Cecil.
I seriously had to look it up. I
How
didn't know
dare
who it was, so I was like, whatever.
Dare you?
I was like, I don't know. I don't know.
Eli, what are some other James Taylor songs that you really like?
Oh, sweet baby James. That song, by the way, is called Fire and Rain. Cowboy's Hand, Country Roads. Not the country roads, but the really good country roads.
How does that one
Opened
go,
SNL.
Eli?
It's fine. I know the bit is that I don't know things, but not for James. For James, I break the bit. For James, I break the bit wide open.
I literally had to Google it, and then I was like, oh, it's that guy. And then I just typed the first thing that came up in Google. Literally, I've seen fire, I've seen
It's
rain
like
video.
the
That's what
opposite
I
of
did.
Bob Dylan. He's like a folk
Anyway.
singer who stayed a good folk singer. It's fine.
Anyway, here is what Taylor said about the encounter. Quote, the guy had sort of pinned me to the wall and was glistening with maniacal sweat and talking some freak speak about what he was going to do and his stuff with how John Lennon was interested and how he was going to get in touch with John Lennon, end quote. I just want to point out how accessible celebrities seem to be to this guy. Later that night, he got a room at the Sheraton and specifically left several things arranged on a table. These included a picture of the Wizard of Oz, the Bible, and an 8-track tape.
Okay, but if being cornered by a sweaty guy is a sign of pending assassination, I'm never going to another atheist conference again, yo.
Oh, shit. Oh, shit.
You gotta feel a little bad about this, though, if you're James Taylor, right? I mean, like, Chapman has a list. He just wants to kill anyone so long as they're famous. He runs into James Taylor and is like, no, I said someone famous.
Are you the I've seen fire and I've seen rain guy? I don't remember. They don't have Google
He
yet.
just throws him back like a fish. He's like, no, I don't want him.
Too small. Too small.
Bob Dylan? Is that Bob
Fuck
Dylan?
you.
Fuck you.
You say these songs, I've seen fire, I've seen rain. Never heard it. I'm sorry, never
He
heard
takes
it.
out his guitar. Come on, I'll convince you to shoot me. There is a young cowboy who lives by the range. Come on, you were conceived to this shit, people.
So John Lennon lived in a co-op in New York at the time called the Dakota. Chapman waited outside of that building for him. At a certain point, Chapman was distracted and John Lennon walked right by him. I have no idea what caught his attention, but he missed his opportunity in the morning. Later that day, Lennon came out of the building and Chapman asked if he could sign his album. This is an album that Chapman brought along with him. John obliged, and Chapman had this to say about the encounter, quote, "He was very kind to me. Ironically, very kind and very patient with me. The limousine was
It's
waiting.
only
and he
ironic
took
if
his
you
time.
later shoot him. It's
I
not
know,
ironic yet.
The limousine waiting, and he took his time with me, and he got this pen going, and he signed my album, and he asked me if I needed anything else, and I said, no, sir, and he walked away. Very cordial and decent man," end quote.
Okay, I love that Chapman clearly got foiled by John Lennon
Right.
being nice when he didn't expect it. He was like, fuck you. You should have signed my... Oh, you will? You will sign the record. Okay. I bet you don't even have a pen for your... Oh, you do carry a pen for your adoring fans. Okay, thanks. Bye. This was a very fun encounter.
Sorry,
Are you going to come back here later? Or
I'm a lonely 16-year-old boy. Nope, I am a shitty grown-up. Just a shitty grown-up.
Lennon got in the limo and went to the recording studio. Later that evening, he returned to the Dakota. He got out of the car, walked by Chapman, who was at that point standing around his place for like 12 hours. Chapman pulled out a .38, shot John Lennon in the back 5 times. Lennon would be rushed to the hospital after he was shot, but he would not survive. On this day, 41 years ago, John Lennon was pronounced dead.
Fuck, man, I would be a terrible assassin. 12 hours? I would
know,
give
man.
up 45 minutes and spend the rest of my afternoon at Chipotle. Are you fucking kidding? 12 hours?
Right?
Okay, I mean, it's sad that the music died, but hey, at least Mark Chapman's Second Amendment rights were intact. Am I right? Huh? Important that guy had access to a gun all the time whenever he wanted one.
Chapman pretty much shot him and then just stood there waiting to be caught. The doorman ran out, knocked the gun out of his hand, but it was empty.
All the bullets are in that guy.
Chapman was standing reading a copy of Catcher in the Rye when the cops arrived a few minutes later. Chapman had written in the book, "This is my statement, Holden Caulfield."
The cops are just like, your statement is about how lonely it is to be a child and how we should be kinder to young people as they form. You're 25, man. Get a job. Take up a hobby.
And if he'd been a black guy, the official record would have said he had been holding that book threateningly. So,
When questioned as to why he killed John Lennon, Chapman had this to say, quote, "I would listen to this music and I would get angry at him for saying in the song God that he didn't believe in God and that he just believed in him and Yoko and that he didn't believe in the Beatles. This was another thing that angered me, even though this record had been done at least 10 years previously. I wanted to scream out loud, who does he think he is, saying these things about God and heaven and the Beatles, saying that he doesn't believe in Jesus and things like that. At this point, my mind was going through a total blackness of anger and rage. So I brought the Lennon book home into this Catcher in the Rye milieu where my mindset is Holden Caulfield and his anti-phoniness," end quote.
Okay, no, I'm not at all convinced that John Deere tractors and Chevy are the panacea for all of America's problems, but I am not waiting outside of Keith Urban's house with like a separate piece and an AR-15. You're not going to pass on this.
Sorry, I just want to point out that Chapman's fucking statement basically boils down to, it's easy to be angry at pretty much anything when you suck as much as I do. I read a book once.
Yeah. Chapman was charged with second-degree murder, which doesn't make a ton of sense. In fact, right before he went to New York to kill John Lennon, he mentioned to his wife that he was planning it, and he showed her the gun. She didn't think he was going to do it, so she never mentioned it to anyone, but that feels like first-degree murder to me.
Rittenhouse juror, you ain't.
Oh, no.
Wives, if someone mentions they're going to do a murder, please tell. Please tell.
Yeah, what the fuck did she think then? Well, honey, I'm going out of town with this gun to kill a guy. Oh, you're so funny. Enjoy your weekend. And remember, if you get a hooker, just talking, okay? Just talking.
He was tested for mental competency by both the prosecution and the defense. I guess anyone walking around obsessing about a novel after they murder someone should be evaluated. They determined that he was delusional yet competent. He stood trial and was convicted. He was sentenced to 20 years to life. He's still alive and he's trying to get out on parole. The next hearing is in August of 22.
Okay, that's not going to go well for him. And I'm glad. They're going to be like, yeah, okay, well, you're probably not a danger to society anymore. You're old, but that book is so fucking bad. Absolutely. That's such a bad
Okay,
book.
guys, can we all wait for him outside and shoot him? Right, because he'd have to admit it was funny. Right, if we like ran over to him afterwards, we were like, "Oh, it's because I read Where the Red Fern Grows."
After Lennon's death, there was a vigil outside the Dakota. There's footage of it, and there are a ton of people singing "Give Peace a Chance" and crowding all around. Evidently, in that crowd was John Hinckley Jr. 3 months later, Hinckley would shoot Ronald Reagan in Washington, D.C. In Hinckley's hotel room was a cassette tape where he mourned John Lennon and wanted to make some kind of statement after his death. Next to that cassette tape was his copy of Catcher in the Rye.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, yeah, you know what? I'm back plus on the book again.
Yeah.
All right, so if you had to summarize what you've learned in one sentence, what would it be?
I am 100% willing to trade up this Catcher in the Rye for a pastrami on rye.
There
Yes.
you go.
Mm.
All right, so you ready for the quiz?
It's a really good sandwich.
Absolutely.
All right, Cecil, which of the following fun facts about J.D. Salinger
Don't
are
do that.
true? A, he refused to let anyone make a movie or TV show of Catcher in the Rye unless he got to play Holden Caulfield.
Which gets more absurd every year. Right? It gets more and more absurd. Yeah.
B, the only interview he agreed to give when Catcher in the Rye first came out was to the local high school paper. And when the interview was published in the local grown-up paper, he had a hissy fit and put up a 6-foot-tall fence around his house in a circle. C, according to his daughter, he occasionally drank his own pee.
What?
What?
Attractive distractor.
D, he tried to fuck my mom.
What?
Or E, all of the above.
I'm going to go with all of the above because even if you're lying, it's still funny.
All of the above is correct.
Okay, there we go.
Tried to fuck my mom.
She just didn't like it?
Yeah, no, he was weird and gross.
Fair enough.
All right, Cecil. When I was student teaching, I found out that I had to teach Catcher in the Rye the night before I had to begin teaching it. I went home and I read it that evening and I decided what? A, this was not a book worth reading. B, this was not a book worth teaching. C, this was not a career worth pursuing. Or D, all of the above.
I know it's D, but it's a lot of C too.
It is.
D with an emphasis on C.
It's really important our listeners understand that you were like, nah, that Catcher in the Rye was so bad you went to refrigerator sales.
All right, so I have a question here for you, Cecil. John Lennon is the most overrated musician in all of human history. Huh?
What?
Wow.
A,
The most?
yes.
That's 100%
B,
accurate.
Yepers. C, absolutely. Or D, oh yeah, obviously.
Wow.
Overrated. It's not even close.
Right,
though.
no, exactly. No,
absolutely.
wow.
E, it's the I seen fire, I seen rain guy.
How dare you?
All right, well, you know what? For that,
I didn't even know his name. I read it earlier. I literally can't remember it.
James Taylor. How do you know?
Okay, sure. Bill Smith, whatever. I don't know, whatever. It's a
Put on
common
some
name.
James
Who
Taylor and
cares?
watch your parents.
I'm-
Watch how snuggly they get.
My parents were both born in the 30s. They fucked to swing music. Get out of here.
All right, no, with that for that good a dunk on Eli, I'll say you're right, even though I'm obviously correct.
They're tied. How's that?
No,
Okay.
it's obviously I'm right.
All right, I got one more for you. So Eli made an excellent point earlier. It would be objectively funny if Chapman got killed outside his parole hearing by a guy with a book from middle school. What is the funniest combination of method and book
Jesus
for that?
Hypothetically, yes. Hypothetically, yes. Go
A,
ahead.
kill him on a rope swing and just be like, so I read Bridge to Terabithia, so figured this is what I had to do. B, cut his head off and stick it on a pike. Lord of the Flies. Sorry, read it. C, muskets and bayonets, Red Badge of Courage, obviously.
Okay, I like that.
Or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
D, push him off a ledge and nobody catches him. I also read Catcher in the Rye. There's a lot of ways to interpret that. Which answer do you think it is?
I'm going to go with A. I love A.
It is not. You were close though.
Oh,
No, it's
boo.
obviously D. It's obviously the Catcher of the Rye one. But so
Yep.
I think Heath won, and it wasn't even close.
Right. I would like a Noah essay next week.
No, you wouldn't, but that's nice of you to say. All right, well, for Cecil, Eli, Heath, and Tom, I'm Noah. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We're going to be back next week, and by then, I'll be an expert on something else. Between now and then, you can hear more of Tom and Cecil on cognitive dissonance, hear more of Heath, Eli, and me on the Scathing Atheist, God Alpha Moose, D&D Minus, and the Skeptocrat, or you can engage in any other possible activity. I can't stop you. I ain't the boss of you. And if you'd like to help keep this show going, you can make a per episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod or leave us a 5-star review everywhere you can. And if you want to get in touch with us, check out past episodes, connect with us on social media, or check the show notes, be sure to check out citationpod.com.
Okay, but what if we opened the show and then did the before show shenanigans?
Little help.
No,
Just a
I
little
think
help.
if we want to open the show with the intro, we'd have to cut the opening sketch altogether. Why do you think the sketch is off-putting for the audience?
I can't reach the knob, guys.
No, I don't know that it's
try-
off-putting. I just think that it might confuse a new listener,
Oh.
like as to what the
So much
show
fun.
is that they're getting into, you know?
I never thought of it that way, but that's
I
a
hate you
good point.
guys. I hate you guys so much. I hate you.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely. And parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/getstarted. That's GREENLIGHT.com/getstarted.